Hello, David Clarke here from DVC Training, and just doing a short video about the latest couple of updates on EDIUS. So they've both been small. It's still 11.11, so no major new features. They've just added support for some new formats and fixed a couple of bugs. And there's just a couple of those that I wanted to talk about. Specifically this one, Intel QuickSync video hardware decoding becomes unsmooth. It doesn't really jump out to you that means much, but actually that was quite a biggie for me. And in the version after this, they've added support for this iPhone stuff, which I don't have an iPhone, so I don't really care. But the other thing they've done is it's possible to uninstall Mink. And why would you want to uninstall Mink? So I'm just really going to talk about those couple of things. The rest of them are all just little bug fixes and changes to the bin, which should make things work better. They don't really change much in the way that you actually use it. Definitely worth getting these updates though, because they are fixing bugs. So first thing, the QuickSync. What are they talking about? Now I'm just going to bring in some clips which are 4K 50p clips, and I'm in a 4K 50p timeline, just random clips in the garden and a bit of me doing a bit of chroma keying, all from a GH5. And set up a couple of picture-in-pictures, so I've got a few layers going. So this is a few layers of 50p 4K. Now this is 50p 4K in a 50p 4K project. I'm using a 14th generation processor, but I don't really expect this is going to play properly. So I'll just set it going and let it play. And yeah, it gets to the third layer and it just can't quite cope with it. So this QuickSync thing has done two things. One, it's improved the way that QuickSync can be used to help play stuff back, particularly with 13th and 14th generation processors. And two, it's just made everything a little bit more responsive on the timelines. The responsiveness on the timeline is a thing that's really hard to show off. So if I'm doing a tutorial, I will stick a clip on the timeline, I will start playing, I'll get to a bit that I want to cut out, I'll either mark out an in and an out point and then do a rip or delete, or particularly when I'm looking at my voiceover and just getting rid of ums and ahs and all those annoying little things that I don't like, I will just have the audio selected and I'll come through, and when I get to an that I want to get rid of, as it's playing, I'll cut it and then I'll press the N key. So cut it with C and press the N key to start a new in point whilst the thing is still playing. Most of the time, if I'm looking at the waveform, I can get that just about right. So maybe that's an there. I won't know till I get to it, but C, N, C, N. See, I'm just cutting out bits on the timeline as I'm playing it, which most of the time I get right, some of the time I don't, and I have to go back and trim it. But it is something where it has to do stuff as you're playing. Now, with this QuickSync thing that they say they fixed, in previous versions of EDIUS 11 and 10 with my 14th generation processor, when I did C and N, there'd be a bit of a hesitation. You could feel it as you're editing. It'll be press, wait, something happens. Not a huge hesitation, like a second or so, but enough to be irritating. And sometimes the C wouldn't happen exactly at the moment I press the C, it would happen 2 or 3 frames later. I could get rid of it by just turning off the QuickSync playback and it got better. But it was irritating. And that's been fixed. It's a small irritation, but it means I can suddenly use QuickSync on my projects to help play my stuff back. It's all H.264 footage. It could really use it, and everything's just a lot nicer to use. So like for doing the tutorials, that is quite a biggie for me. Just makes it nicer and easier to edit tutorials. They fixed that, and that's been something that's been going on with EDIUS for a couple of years. At the same time, it means it can use QuickSync better. So if you have got from me a system with a 12th or 13th or 14th generation processor recently, I have been saying, look, turn off the QuickSync playback. I hardly ever had it happen to me, and I've used 12th, 13th, 14th generation processors all the way through those years, and I've never really had this. But some people have put H.264 footage on the timeline, and QuickSync playback's enabled, and it crashes. And I have been saying, look, it's a bit dodge, turn it off. Since this doesn't really happen to me with my own footage, I can't promise you 100% that this is also fixed with this QuickSync update. But I'm thinking it is. So I would suggest you try it out, because it should mean better performance for you when you're playing stuff back. If you have QuickSync off, then the processor's doing everything. With QuickSync on, then the QuickSync part of it will be doing the decoding, the processor will be doing everything else. It should be able to do more stuff. So in particular, with my 3 layers here, if I had the QuickSync off, I wouldn't be able to get as much playing back. Now, when I play these 3 layers back, as you'll notice, I can get up here and it will eventually get to the third one. The buffer will start dropping and eventually it will conk out. So I can't quite play 3 layers here. But because of a lot of changes in an EDIUS 11, the way it can now use the NVIDIA card as well as the QuickSync card, I might be able to fiddle with something to make that playback better. There's a lot of settings in here. I have gone through it in a previous video, but I'm just going to go through it again as simply as possible. You've got in here 3 settings for whether you're using the Intel or the NVIDIA or both, and whether you're using it to help play stuff back. So under hardware, you have this video rendering and playback thing. And this says use the GPU, and you tell it which GPU you prefer. Now this means use GPU for effects as well as for playback. Currently there aren't that many effects that use it, mainly it's the primary color corrector. So it doesn't make a huge amount of difference on effects, but obviously it does help when it comes to playing back footage. If you have that set, it will use the NVIDIA first, and then go on to the Intel if it can use it. If you have that first, it uses the Intel and then onto the NVIDIA. And I have found my personal preference now with this version of EDIUS has been setting it to Intel, and then I found I got the best performance out of it. The other setting that you've got is down here. So under AVCHD, there's this use hardware decoder, and under HEVC, there is a use hardware decoder. Now again, these are all to do with playback of footage, not exporting. But with this, if that's ticked, it will use either the NVIDIA or the Intel to help play back H.264 footage, and that one to play back H.265 footage. If you turn those off, even with this on, it won't be using the hardware at all. It won't be using either the NVIDIA or the Intel. Same as that one. Turn that off, it's not using the NVIDIA or the Intel. So if I pop into here and play it, it's dying on the second layer. Now my footage is H.264, so that is this one here, the AVC one, and my footage isn't H.265, so that doesn't matter. Turning that off means it's not using the hardware at all, so it couldn't manage as much. If you tick that, which hardware it uses first depends on this, and I've personally found that I get the best results with that. Swap it around and I can see what I get on the playback. Now in either case there, as I say, it's playing 3 layers, but you can see it's doing better than it was without the hardware decoding. Now you can play with these yourself and just see which gives you the best results. If it crashes a lot with your footage, then you'll have to turn these off. But mainly, which of these works best for you? Try one, play it and see what happens. And it'll depend on what footage you've got, what computer you've got. Is it H.265, H.264, 4K, HD, whatever. But I found that's my preference. If you bring up the Task Manager, you can see in Task Manager which one is being used. So you can see I've got an awful lot of disks in here, which doesn't help. At the bottom here, I've got my 2 graphics card processors. The Intel one, which is built into the processor, and the NVIDIA one. So if I start that playing back, you'll notice now the Intel has gone up to 85%. So obviously it's using that to play back stuff. It gets to the 3 layers and it uses a bit of the NVIDIA. If I go back into this and I'll change the settings, so pop this over to NVIDIA, bring Task Manager up again, and I'll start the timeline playing back. And now you'll notice it's using NVIDIA and then a bit of Intel. So it used the NVIDIA first, and then when that couldn't cope with it, it used a bit of Intel. Again, change it back to the other way round, play back the timeline, and you'll notice it uses the Intel first, and then starts using a bit of NVIDIA. Now, in both cases, my timeline can't quite manage to play back the 3 whole layers. It can only play back 2 and plays a bit of that one and then dies. If I was to put on an effect, let's put on the primary color corrector. And theoretically, I would say in this case, because I know the primary color corrector is only souped up by the NVIDIA, but the Intel can play the footage back, setting Intel as the main one here would mean the footage will get decoded by the Intel, but when it needs to, it'll use the NVIDIA for decoding and also for the primary color corrector. Now, in reality, did it make any difference on these particular clips? No. But that, I think, overall has produced me the best results. Hopefully this means now you can enable quick sync playback with your 12th, 13th and 14th generation processors and not have it crash with certain types of footage. Secondly, it should mean that you get better performance out of your system than you used to. It isn't a revolution in performance. It doesn't suddenly mean you can do 15 layers or anything, but it is definitely better. Biggest thing for me is this thing that when I was chopping stuff and moving stuff around, or sometimes I'd just be using the layouter and it'd just be a little bit sticky as you're dragging stuff around, and that's definitely got better with that little quick sync update. Now there's a bunch of other fixes, but the other one I mentioned is the fact that you can uninstall Mync. Mink obviously being Grass Valley's cataloging program. Now with EDIUS 11 they revamped Mink in the same way that they revamped the bin, and I found it's been frankly less useful than it used to be. I never really used it that much, but I found that they've taken out a few things that I used to use. Mink does pop up here, but again, I don't use it very much in there at all. Because of the way they've integrated Mink with EDIUS, it has to synchronize your footage between the two when you load up projects. As I don't use it very much, and as there's this extra syncing going on, I am thinking I'll uninstall it and see if things get a bit better. And now they've given you the option to do that. You can try it, see whether it works. If you're not using Mink, just take it out. When you next install EDIUS, it will put it back in again, and you'll have to uninstall it. But you can come in here, find Mink 11. I've also got Mink from EDIUS 9 on here, because I use that somewhere. And you can take that and uninstall it, and then use EDIUS without Mink, and see if the bin's a little bit nicer, a bit more responsive. You could always uninstall Mink, but it would just leave this Mink tab still in here. Now when you uninstall Mink, it will get rid of it, which means it won't have Mink in there. Maybe your bin will be a bit faster, a bit nicer. You can try it. Let me know in the comments if you find that's something that actually makes EDIUS work slightly better. Another small update. No major extra features, just lots of bug fixes. So definitely worth having if you've got EDIUS 11, but they don't give you any pressing new reasons to change to it if you haven't decided to buy it yet. The reasons to change to EDIUS 11 from whatever you've got are still the same as always. I mean, if you're working from EDIUS 8 or 9, there's actually quite a lot of extra new features because there was a lot added in EDIUS 10 that was very, very useful. In terms of what's in EDIUS 11 compared to EDIUS 10, it is basically things like they've souped up the way it can use the graphics card, so you should get slightly better performance out of it, especially if you have a very nice fancy NVIDIA card, you can get better performance out of it. The biggest EDIUS thing that I personally use is a thing called adjustment layers. So for example here, I could shove in a track above these three, mark an in and an out point, and then I could just shove in an adjustment layer on top. Simplest way I find to do is put an in and out point and then just right click on the track and say new clip adjustment layer, and it makes an adjustment layer that goes over everything. And then I can do stuff on that adjustment layer and it will affect everything else beneath it. So for example, for tutorials, I actually use the layouter because it will shrink down everything underneath it thusly. And I can pan and scan my videos so that you can see them properly on YouTube using adjustment layers now. Yeah, I used to make up a new sequence, put one sequence inside of another, and then I would open up the layouter for this one and pan and scan it as I move through the timeline. But then if I found out I made a mess in my original edit, I'd have to go into this sequence, change it, come back to this one, and then fiddle around. Now, because I can do it with adjustment layers, I can do it all in one sequence. It's also good for doing things like adding color correction to a whole bunch of clips at once. So, you know, I can add the same look to everything. Let's go and make the shadows a bit tilky and the highlights a bit orangey. Anything like that, any effect you can pop on the adjustment layer and it should affect the ones underneath it. Sometimes for my CGI stuff, I will come in here and find an old movie filter and pop it on there, open it up. I turn off all the dust and hair and the scratches and the jitter, turn on a bit of border darkening, turn on a bit of film grain, turn off the deinterlacing and the flickering. But again, I pop it under an adjustment layer so it'll then affect all the clips underneath it. So I've got 5 clips on the timeline, they all got the same effect. Saves me having to do it one clip at a time. And that's probably the biggest new EDIUS feature that I really like. The other stuff that I like, obviously, is VizTitle. Having VizTitle in the system as opposed to having to use QuickTitler all the time or having to use NewBlue, which was okay, but I always found to be a bit buggy, and I always liked VizTitle. Now you've got Viz Title Express with it, which is great. The new audio filter you've got in here, which you don't have in EDIUS 10, is this AI one, which will try and isolate a voice using AI as opposed to just old-fashioned noise reduction. You know, we had the denoising thing introduced in EDIUS 10 where you can sample a noise and get rid of it. This one gives you the ability to use AI to get rid of it, which I find does a better job. Again, if you pay more money, of course, you can get better ones, like I've got the full version of Acorn here. You do also get Acorn Acustica, which is a standalone audio editing program, which of course you didn't used to get with EDIUS. And you get the Vitascene stuff. So there's all these Vitascene 5 effects that you can put on clips, borders, blurs, all that kind of thing. So you know, I go into Build Effects from scratch and pop that on there, and then I'll come into Vitascene itself and do stuff. Because it's got some interesting things in here. Again, CGI stuff. This annulus blur, which produces interesting looking blur around things. And there's a whole bunch of there's directional blurs and all sorts of different blurs there that we don't have in EDIUS natively. Under filters, there's the blooms. So you can get it to glow areas in the image, that sort of thing, which I find useful. So a few useful little filters in there, which I do use. And I actually use the RGB shift, again with CGI, to produce a bit of chromatic aberration around the edges of an image. Again, I'm not really going into details on that, but there are quite a few useful effects that you can use in there, and they're all coming with it. And of course, you got the picture enhancer. Simple way of trying to clean up your pictures. As you can see there, it is making that picture actually look quite a lot nicer just by fiddling with those slider. A lot of the time I can get the same kind of results using the primary color corrector and a lot of fiddling, but what I like about this is it's nice and simple and produces a good result quickly. But those are the biggies for me inside of EDIUS 11. Vitascene, Viz Title in particular, adjustment layers. They do have a new OFX bridge, so I do happen to have Boris Continuum on here, and I can use some of those in there, but that's not working 100% with everything at the moment. Some of it works well, some of it doesn't. So the major things, like I said, I find are adjustment layers, Viz Title, the AI audio enhancer, and picture enhancer. And that's if you're going from EDIUS 10 to EDIUS 11. If you're going from EDIUS 9, EDIUS 8, there's quite a lot of extra stuff there, which you won't have, that is definitely worth having, because there was a lot of stuff introduced in EDIUS 9 and EDIUS 10. Anyway, I hope you found that video useful. Now, don't forget to do the usual. Visit my website, www.dvctraining.co.uk, for more information and stuff about video, including EDIUS, Premiere, etc. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more videos, and I'll see you next time.